Hello, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are in the world. I don't want to waste so much time on this one. I'm just going to be very fast because there is a lot of ground to cover and a lot of stuff to cover. So, as you can see, that is the article that has been making rounds all over the internet. The double standards of the UK government on its policy towards the dictator Museveni, and how it is working, and how it is responding on other governments or on other countries when it comes to human rights, when it comes to arbitrary detentions and things of that sort. Now, we all understand that a couple of days ago, the UK Foreign Secretary sent a message that was kind of quasi congratulating Museveni and saying that the election was calm and all this kind of thing. So it's upon that background that Declassified UK tried to dig and investigate the reason as to why the UK would actually make such a statement. Now, this is against the backdrop of other people, human rights activists, as well as open societies in the UK condemning and criticizing the UK government's statement on Museveni and his actions before, during, and after the elections. Now, Declassified released this article that said that Britain's African minister, who welcomed Uganda's flawed election, had business ties to an ally of the country's president. So the article in Declassified UK highlighted and showed that this gentleman, the foreign minister who congratulated Museveni on his flawed election, actually has some sort of a conflict of interest, because he is linked to Museveni's business partner in Uganda. Now, for those of you who come from Uganda, and for anyone who is watching me from different parts of the world, Ugandan business is very complex and very interesting, because it is very hard to find people who are successful in business without government interference, number one. Number two, it is also widely known that most of the prominent businessmen and most of the richest businessmen in Uganda, in their businesses, of course, Museveni has a hand in it, to the effect that he, to some extent, people say that he owns those businesses, but puts different people as posters, just in order to confuse people in the international community. But in the background, of course, he is the one running and owning these businesses, buying land, and so all these kind of things. So Declassified UK dug into the Foreign Secretary, Britain's African Minister, James Dadridge, who congratulated Museveni's flawed election. That is the gentleman you see there. Now, it says that in the article that Britain's Minister for Africa, who endorsed disputed election results in Uganda last week, worked until recently for a company in which one of the country's richest businessmen and an ally of its authoritarian president plays a leading role. Declassified has found the revelation comes after the UK's Foreign Office whitewashed the re-election of Uganda's President Museveni, despite diplomats from the US and Europe raising serious concerns over voter suppression and access for international observers. Now, the gentleman, James Dadridge, who is UK's African minister, of course, it's just like for him, he wasn't following at all what was going on in Uganda. The suppression of freedoms of people, the switching off internet 5 days, the arrest and killings of people during, before, and after the elections, as well as the blocking of journalists, especially removal of accreditation from journalists, killing journalists, beating journalists, and all this kind of thing. The US and Europe have been raising serious concerns on the matter, but the UK has always been silent. Now, the reason as to why UK matters a lot in this whole thing is because, number one, Britain, of course, was the colonial master to Uganda. It's the former colonial master of the country, and of course, whatever happens in the country, of course, it's not that we are looking for Britain, blah 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 blah, but that element is really, really important, and how other countries engage or how they work in Uganda is also in respect to Britain's policy in one way or the other. But things seem to be shifting, and I will be giving my analysis on that anyway. So the article goes on to say dozens died on the campaign trail, and Ugandan soldiers illegally held opposition leader Bobi Wine under house arrest during the poll. But Britain's African minister, James Dadridge, MP, was criticized by experts after he described the elections as relatively calm. Now, one of the experts that I read about that actually criticized his statement, he said that Uganda was a good model that the UK should have used to condemn human rights abuses, to condemn freedoms and all this kind of thing, to show how it is going to stand in the world when it comes to open societies, to show how it's going to stand in the world in balancing, trade ties and working with different governments, but as well as not undermining freedom of expression, freedom of expression, and all sorts of things of that kind. So the gentleman said that for this, the United Kingdom or Britain actually failed, and it failed so badly, especially in its response to the elections in Uganda, because the way it responded for a highly publicized election, for a highly publicized event, is going to affect the same way that it response on other events, and I'll come to that as well. It can now be revealed that Dadridge Dadridge, who is the Minister for African Affairs in Britain, has earned at least £20,205 as an advisor to TLG Capital Investments, a London-based finance house whose advisory board is chaired by Ugandan multi-millionaire Emmanuel Katongole. Now, I'll come to this poster as well later. Let me first go through the article. Katongole is among Uganda's wealthiest businessmen and trusted by Museveni, who has been in power since 1986, to run some of East African nations' most sensitive organizations. Declassified understands that Dadridge seized his role with TLG before taking up his ministerial position in February last year. However, his parliamentary register of interest states that he advises the company despite rules requiring MPs to update their registers within 28 days of seizing the job. He did not respond to requests for the comment, and Foreign Office would only speak to Declassified on background. Museveni has twice appointed Katongole to chair the state-owned Uganda National Oil Company, a role he currently holds. Museveni also picked Katongole to lead Uganda's fundraising efforts in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Katongole made his fortune running Cipla Quality Chemicals, a pharmaceutical company in which TLG is the second largest investor. Cipla Quality Chemicals has begun as a public-private partnership with Museveni's government, and last year, Uganda's Health Ministry reportedly awarded it a contract to make an antiviral drug, hydroxychloroquine, for coronavirus patients. Now, prior to joining TLG, Dadridge visited Uganda in October, blah, 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 blah. For those of you who are interested in the article, you will go and read through the article. But while I was making the research and, reading through the article and trying to understand the entire thing, now, going back to the chart, this is what happened. This is the gentleman that you see here. This gentleman is known as Emmanuel Katongole. He's the chairman and the owner of Quality Chemicals. At first, we used to call it Quality Chemicals Uganda, something like that. They used to manufacture mosquito nets and things of that sort. But now it's known as Cipla Quality Chemicals. Now, Cipla Quality Chemicals Cipla Quality Chemicals, one of its major investors is TLG Capital. Now, TLG Capital invested a lot of money into Quality Chemicals, of which Quality Chemicals is a public-private owned company that is owned by Katongole, as well as public, that is the government. And the government, of course, we mean Museveni. Now, this gentleman Katongole also sits on the board of TLG Capital. Now, TLG Capital, what is interesting is that it is a London-based financial advisory firm, of which Mr. James Dadridge, the Minister for Africa, was actually a former paid advisor. So Dadridge, the minister who made a statement, who actually doesn't want Bobi Wine to become president, who made a statement about the elections in Uganda being calm, was employed by TLG Capital. Now, I'll come to Dadridge later. as I've told you initially, in Uganda, whenever you see a person, Museveni can never let rich people be rich. Every business in Museveni has, every business in Uganda that is successful has Museveni's hands in. He must have shares in that business, or he controls the business, or the business is it's his, and then he has different people that he puts there to run the business for him as a face for his particular business ventures. The same applies to land in Uganda. Most of the people who are buying land are people within the army, Museveni's henchmen, and as well as stalwarts. But they get people coming from different regions and different tribes and use those people to buy that land and big caretakers, sort of. And then Museveni, they operate in the background. So you'll see these people gaining contracts. You'll see these people being untouchable. You'll see these people that for them they can break the law and no one can touch them. Now, Katongole, Emmanuel, of course, he's part of Quality Chemicals. He owns Quality Chemicals. He owns in quotes, but of course this looks to be like Museveni's looks to be like Museveni's company. And then the other company known as TLG Capital, on which Mr. Katongole sits as a chairman, chairman of the advisory board, is a big investor in Cipla Quality Chemicals Industries, Uganda. Now, what is interesting is that Museveni, when coronavirus happened last year, you remember Donald Trump talking about the issue of hydroxychloroquine, where they said that, it is really healing people of coronavirus and people should start taking the drug. So Museveni rushed that, this is an opportunity, I think we should use it and start also manufacturing our own hydroxychloroquine. So that's what happened, and they gave this gentleman the contract, Quality Chemicals, to start manufacturing it in large scale. Now, Museveni, as well, we also know that he appointed this gentleman to be the chairman of the Uganda National Oil Company. Of course, that is the organization that is in charge of our oil and so on and so forth. Like you can see here, is the chairman, and he was also the chairman of the Uganda COVID Response Fund. The Uganda COVID Response Fund is the fund that was set up by the government, where people could donate money, could put money, companies, individuals, even Bobi Wine actually also put some money there. This is the gentleman that collected all that money, the Uganda National COVID Response Fund. So he's the gentleman that was in charge of it. He was the chairman. He was also appointed by Museveni. All these decisions were made without the consultation of the cabinet, without the consultation of the public, and without the consultation of the parliament. But these are just people that Museveni places by will, and no one has to challenge them on that particular matter. Now, coming back to this, because most of you are asking, okay, where does the Minister for Africa come in? Now, this gentleman, because this gentleman, James Dadridge, him being an advisor to TLG Capital, right, and TLG Capital being a very big investor in Quality Chemicals, of course, he must have taken part in advising about, investing in Quality Chemicals and things of that sort. And this linked him directly, being an advisor to TLG Capital, on which Katongole is also the chairman. It linked him directly it linked him directly with Katongole, of which it connected him directly with Museveni. Because the business that Katongole is running, we are not even very sure that they're actually his. For those of you who come to Uganda, you know what it means. And the fact that this gentleman actually met President Museveni in 2015 and they talked about business opportunities in the banking and things of that sort, all those things, they raise a lot of red flags. Now, what happens is that in 2021, January 14th, this gentleman, James Dadridge, it's like he never saw what happened in Uganda. I do not know why he is even the Minister of Africa, because if he doesn't even know what is going on, I don't know where his mind is. I don't know where his attention is, because the biggest news, the biggest event that has been going on the African continent is the thing about Bobi Wine. And he forgets about each and everything, and he says, okay, let me endorse Museveni. That is why this arrow comes here. So he endorses Museveni in order to make sure that this entire thing keeps running. Now, Why is it wrong? It is wrong because James Dadridge did not declare his connections with TLG Capital, especially given the fact that it could have caused a conflict of interest. Because who knows that Dadridge's statement is influenced by his connections that he had with Museveni, or the connections he had with Katongole, who is connected to Museveni. So he did not declare that. And not declaring that is actually something that shows that he knew what he was exactly doing. So it does not come as a surprise that Mr. Dadridge actually endorsed Museveni. And this explains it all. Because most of the people in the UK government and the British government have actually interests in Uganda. And Museveni and these people have connived and worked hand in hand to make sure that they reap and take money from the UK and then, create projects here and there and get that funding money, and then they create projects. Because Dadridge, it is said that he has investments in countries like Kenya and other countries when you go and read into the article. Now, this is the gentleman. So he's the Minister of African Affairs. You go to his Twitter, show him what happened, give him the pictures, give him all the evidence, show him that actually the elections were rigged. I'm so interested. What is interesting is that the Ugandan newspapers and the Ugandan TVs and radios and television stations, I'm surprised that they did not even cover this particular news, because this would have been big news. But they did not bother to cover it because they knew that if at all maybe they covered it, it would have thrown them in big water, especially given the fact that Museveni right now is trying to create a PR campaign, is trying to create a new image of himself, and that is why you see that he is trying to brush himself up. But unfortunately, things are not working in his interest. Now, to take you back a few years or a few months ago, this is not the first minister, or he's not the first person in government to have links with Museveni. Now, if you go back here and see this Tory MP, this is not the first Tory who has been engaged with Museveni directly and then creating a conflict of interest, especially with the Ugandan people, not paying attention to the Ugandan people who are being killed and so on and so forth. There is also another Tory peer, this lady known as Sandeep Verma. This was the solar panels scandal that happened, that was exposed as well. Now, it says that Tory peer accused of breaching ministerial code with Ugandan deals. So it seems like a scourge. It seems like an epidemic that is going on within the Tory government, that these people have deals with the Ugandan government. People have deals with Museveni, which creates a conflict of interest. And the other thing is that these people do not declare these businesses with the dictator. What is going on? This should be a lesson to all African countries. This should be a lesson to all African countries. Now, ex-minister Sandeep Verma allegedly broke rules after family farm signed deals worth of 88 million pounds. It says a conservative peer has been accused of breaching ministerial code after her family farm signed multi-million pound deals to supply Uganda's government with solar power equipment. Sandeep Verma's company, Nexus Green, has signed two deals worth more than 88 million after meetings with the sub-Saharan country's notoriously homophobic president Yoweri Museveni. Lady Verma appears to have broken ministerial rules after joining the company as chair and director without informing the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments, ACOBA. She was present when Nexus Green signed an 8 million deal to provide the Ugandan military with solar power, 8 months after leaving her job as a junior development minister. According to the rules to ensure transparency, ministers are supposed to declare all roles and jobs for up to 2 years after leaving office. The deals have surprised other suppliers in the African solar power market. Verma and her son Ricky are the only directors. They have no previous experience in the industry, and the company does not even have a website. The Ugandan government has also signed an agreement with the firm last September to build a factory to make solar equipment. According to the agreement, most of it would be financed by applying for a loan worth more than 80 million pounds from the UK Export Finance, UKEF, which is an export credit agency and a government department. Preet Kaur Gill, the Shadow Development Minister Development Secretary called for Boris Johnson to launch an inquiry, saying the guidance on accepting an appointment after leaving ministerial office is clear. The Prime Minister must immediately instigate a full investigation to confirm whether Baroness Varma broke the high standards expected of ministers by both ministerial code and the public. Ministers cannot be allowed to abuse their position for personal gain. If she is found to have broken the code, the Prime Minister must act to reassure the public that he will not tolerate such violations. Varma, 61, a former parliamentary candidate who was made a life peer in 2006, was junior minister in the Department of Energy and Climate Change from 2012 to 2015, and then from the International Development DFID from May 2015 to July 2016. She also stood last year to become mayor of her home city of Leicester, many of whose residents were forced to leave Uganda in the 1970s. Ha! Interesting. Contacted by The Guardian, Varma said she believed she did not break the rules, blah, blah, blah. Now, what is interesting about this thing is that okay, let's go here. Varma met Ugandan government officials on at least one occasion while she was minister. On September 12th, 2015. This is the same year also Dadridge actually meets Museveni for the very first time in London at a convention to discuss investment opportunities in sectors such as energy. The following month, Ricky became the director of Nexus Green, a company based in a building in Leicester, jointly owned by his parents. Ricky, who sometimes uses the title Honorable because he's the son of a peer, has been described as the chief executive of the company, while his mother is the chair, according to The Guardian. The $8 million agreement with the Ugandan government to provide its military facilities with off-grid solar energy infrastructure was signed in February 2017 and was witnessed by Museveni and Varma. In January this year, as part of a push to strike deals outside the EU, DFIT announced 27 deals across Africa, including Nexus Green's plan to export 80 million pounds of solar-powered water pumping systems for irrigation in Uganda. The Uganda Parliament's National Economic Committee has written a PDF that Nexus Green plans to establish a factory in Uganda to make solar-powered irrigation equipment and install systems. Last September, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that is it. Nexus Green, this lady known as Baroness Sandeep Varma. What she did was, whenever she resigned her job, according to The Guardian, whenever she resigned her job, she attended a conference where you be very careful of those business conferences. Uganda business conferences, Sijui UNA, Sijui Uganda Business Expo, such conferences. They are drills that these people are using to connect and start stealing from our country. Now, this lady Baroness, whenever she realized that, oh, there is a deal we can strike with the Ugandan government and the dictator, she created a company known as Nexus Green in order to supply solar panels worth of 80 million pounds. Now, after creating Nexus Green, it was discovered that the lady and her company, they have no prior experience in solar power energy, number one. Number two, she was the only director and her son Ricky was the other partner in the company. No other person was working in this particular company. Now, as a minister, she had to declare her business dealings 2 years after she left the post of minister, but she never declared that. Secondly, the fact that the way she attained the contract is all murky. It is not clear because people who are suppliers in the African market were also surprised to see such a thing happening, especially with a country like Uganda. Now, if Lady Varma has all the qualifications to supply solar panels, that is not a problem. She has a right to get the contract and supply like any other person in the world. But the problem that comes in is this. Can Lady Varma supply solar panel equipments to Uganda as well as condemn human rights abuses? Right? Can she do that? Definitely not. What that means is a conflict of interest. Now, what The Guardian alleges says that Lady Varma used her position as a former minister as well as a former director of DFID in order to influence this business deal to take place. Now, whenever you do such kind of thing, it leads to the people who are losers, and the people who suffer the most out of this entire thing are the Ugandan people. Because this lady, she would have been able to condemn the actions of Museveni, but now she can't, because she has an £80 million deal that is going on within her and the government. Now, in Uganda, someone will ask, how about the people in Uganda? Well, such kind of deals are kept away from the Ugandan parliament. I told you last time, the Ugandan parliament is just a rubber stamp. The Ugandan parliament do not know anything that is going on. When Museveni was going to Beijing in China a few years ago, he never took anyone from the Ugandan oil industry. He only goes with himself, the wife, and a few family members to sign oil deals and sign Ugandan minerals on behalf of Ugandans without even consulting the Ugandan parliament. When he is taking troops to Somalia, as well as South Sudan and other countries, he does not consult anyone. He does it to his own understanding. He makes these deals, personal. So you see that the Museveni network has a lot of tentacles. It is very deeply entrenched in different countries. It is entrenched in Israel. I just made a video about Israel. It is entrenched so much in the UK government, and that is why you see such kind of things happening. That Museveni, they still recognize him as one of their best leaders in Africa, that is playing ball with him because he gives them business, because they share the money and sorts of things, advisory roles and stuff like that. Now the same thing happened to James Dadridge, because James Dadridge has the connections with Museveni's stalwart known as Emmanuel Katongole, and Emmanuel Katongole is directly linked to Museveni, so they cannot condemn anything. On the other hand, let us look at what the UK is doing in the rest of the world, condemning human rights abuses. There's a country known as Russia. Most of you who have been following Russian politics, this gentleman has propped up a 44-year-old former businessman known as Alexei Navalny. Navalny has stood up against Putin, and Navalny is challenging Putin's leadership, and he has been exposing corruption scandals in Russia. Now, what is interesting about the UK's approach to Navalny, as well as the UK's approach to Russia, is that they have been making strong statements. They have been, being strong and, saying we are going to do this, we are going to do this because of Navalny and all this kind of thing. Now, one of the things, let's see, according to the Independent says, this is 2 days ago, UK government to open further Russian sanctions over Navalny detention. When Bobi Wine was detained, no sanctions were talked about. When Bobi Wine was beaten and everything, and his bodyguards killed, nothing was said. When his wife was manhandled and beaten, nothing was said. But for Navalny, the UK government to open further Russian sanctions over Navalny detention. Now, Britain will keep the option of further sanctions against Russian individuals under review after the detention of opposition leader Alexei Navalny, a Foreign Office minister said. In the Commons on Wednesday, Wendy Morton was urged by some MPs to freeze the assets of more individuals, including Russian oligarchs involved in the English football. Chelsea owner Roman Abramovich, Everton-linked Alisher Usmanov were named by the detained Kremlin critic Mr. Navalny as people who should be targeted by foreign governments in order to prevent human rights abuses by the Russian state. Well, Bobi Wine also noted a few people. He noted Museveni himself, he noted the son, he noted the leaders of the SFC. That is why, for me, like you can see, the American policy towards Uganda has been very, very, it has been so much on the side of the people than the British. But look at what the British are doing in Russia. They were not even Russia was not their colony. But look what they're doing in Russia. That Navalny recommended these people to be arrested and to be sanctioned. Well, in Uganda, in Africa, where it is even much easier, because you don't need to go after the so-called, we don't have any footballers, or we don't have people that are so rich that you have to get their businesses in London. No. What you can do is, number one, you should tell your ministers to stop taking kickbacks and stop taking money from Museveni. Number two, avoid conflicts of interest. Number three, recognize that human rights abuses are going on in Uganda and hold the people accountable. Because apparently, as we speak today, nothing is happening. Former Labour Minister Dame Margaret Hodge and Lib Democrat Foreign Affairs spokesperson Leila Moran backed the idea and said the government should take action. Ministers, Morton said, we keep further sanctions designations under constant review. However, it would not be appropriate to comment at this stage on possible further designations, as this could undermine their impact. The minister pledged to freeze Russian state assets wherever we have the evidence that they may be used to threaten the life or property of UK nationals or residents. Speaking during a debate following an urgent parliamentary question, Dame Margaret said the best way in which we can show our support for Alexei Navalny is not by words but by actions, and not by investigations but by convictions. Why is it that the policy in Russia is so aggressive, and yet the policy in Uganda is completely different? And yet the people in Uganda are going through much worse things, because every channel has been tried. We have tried voting. You see what Museveni has done to us. We have tried every channel, every non-violent channel, and everything. Nothing has actually come out of all these channels, as you can see. So, according to the experts, when they critiqued the UK government's response to the elections in Uganda, this is what they said according to Devex.com. UK fails Open Society's test with Uganda. Critics say. Now, this is what they said. The statement. This is in regards to the statement that James Dadridge released. That he said that the elections were calm and they recognized Museveni's re-election. They say that the statement was criticized as weak and by many in the development sector, especially given that open societies is a priority area for FCDOs. FCDOs are Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. Now, the statement was inconsistent with the political reality, according to Angelo Izama, a Ugandan journalist and analyst. He added it did not speak at all to the scale of what was going on in Uganda, which by any standards was a uniquely severe challenge to democratic norms. Professor Samuel Hickey from the Politics and Development Department at the University of Manchester said it was a disingenuous response to quite how violent and repressive the election was, which was the worst in the last 4 decades. Hickey said that after the first paragraph, the rest of it's standard boilerplate response. You could probably check it against any other response to any other election in Uganda or elsewhere. It obviously doesn't imply any action at all. Democracy and International Development Professor Nicholas Chisman from the University of Birmingham said that to loud media and observers in a statement without noting that the media was heavily censored and without noting that EU observers were not actually on ground because they were deliberately not invited by the government is very misleading. It creates the impression that these institutions were able to function when, of course, they were not able to function as they should have been. The statement potentially played into Museveni's hand, Chisman said. After opening a new FDCO last year, Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab wrote that open societies would be one of the global challenges at the heart of its department's development policy. While there is little detail from the FC Commonwealth Development Organization or whatever about how it will tackle this issue, Raab wrote that this work would strengthen democratic institutions, human rights, free media, and effective governance. According to Hickey, this is a really interesting test for the new FCDO, which claims that it wants to have a strategic alignment between its own interests and the countries where it can make a difference. What seems to be happening is so far is the UK is privileging its strategic interests over its concern with open societies. Now, those are the articles that I wanted to share with you about the incident that was actually, to give you more light on what is going on, especially in the UK policy and things of that sort. So you can make up your mind and see, because that is what Britain is now doing. And you see that James Dadridge, there is a lot of conflict of interest and things of that sort. But we are monitoring the situation and we are seeing what is going on. At least not so many people are seated back and waiting to see what happens afterwards and things of that sort, that people are actually trying as much as they can. The Ugandans in the UK and other parts of the world, so many people are fighting this battle with us. They are sending things, they're trying to rebut to these ministers and going to their Twitters and going to their offices, some of them trying to show them what is really on ground. Because if at all the UK thinks that, because I'm really perturbed by the United Kingdom and the Britain thinking that their policy towards Museveni is a policy that looks like, okay, Museveni is going to live forever. It's like, okay, Museveni is going to be here for the rest of the time. I've always told people that the more Museveni keeps himself in power, the worse and the worse the situation becomes, and the worse the situation will be to oust him out of power. Because if he is not being held accountable, he thinks that he is untouchable. He thinks like he is nothing can be done to him. That is really bad. And by the time we think that, okay, I think it is time for him to go, it will be already too late. Because the people of Uganda have given up, especially with countries like the United Kingdom and the UK and Britain. They have really given up. Because endorsing such kind of people like Museveni is really, 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 really unacceptable. Especially for a country that we think that holds things like human rights, freedom of speech, freedom of expression in high regard. And everything that they hold near and dear in terms of their whatever principles, Museveni is just doing the complete opposite. Because the ministers in the government, Tory government, are having conflicts of interest. Thank you very much for listening. We shall be coming back later to give you more that is happening here and there. Bye-bye.